For more on the conflict, let's turn now to Saeed Khan. He focuses on Near East and Asian Studies at Wayne State University. Really appreciate you coming on the program tonight, Saeed. Now, of course, we know that this Israeli offensive is coming any moment now. Given what's taken place already, how crucial is this visit by Secretary of State Antony Blinken arriving in Israel tomorrow?
It doesn't really seem as though it's going to necessarily deter the Israelis from taking the action that they are. Of course, many analysts and scholars do regard this as being a violation of international law, not only the forced movement of over 1 million people to the south, but also punitive actions like shutting off the water, electricity, food supplies being restricted, and the such. It seems as though if Secretary of State Blinken really wanted to use the whole thrust of American influence and leadership, he could have arguably demanded that Prime Minister Netanyahu either stand down or to try to ease and alleviate the suffering of the people in Gaza. That doesn't really seem to be the case. Now, does that mean that with the Secretary of State going to Israel, that might delay further the ground offensive? We still don't know. It would seem to be rather embarrassing, however, for the United States if, in fact, the ground offensive occurs while the leading diplomat for Washington happens to be in Israel at that time. So, again, it's a very, very fluid situation, but what seems to be really lacking is any kind of serious work to try to bring humanitarian relief to the Palestinians in Gaza.
What would be the options there to try and get humanitarian relief through the border? We just heard in Egypt, negotiations to try and get humanitarian aid through the Israeli side. That failed. How can international leaders push Netanyahu and his government to try and allow, some kind of better situation for those fleeing Gaza?
Well, currently it doesn't seem as though there's much of a political will, particularly among Western countries. If one takes a look at the statements coming from France, from Germany, from the UK, and of course from the United States, none of them seem to really be placing any circuit breakers on Prime Minister Netanyahu. In fact, if anything, it seems to be full-throated support for the Israelis. That isn't sitting well, particularly if one takes a look at the public response in these countries in trying to push for humanitarian aid to reach there. One thing that no one is really talking about is that Gaza may be surrounded on two sides by Israel and one side by Egypt, but there is the Mediterranean. It seems as though if there really was the will, there could be a sea crossing to bring humanitarian aid. That seems to be elusive, of course, because the Israelis do control the seaways right off the coast of Gaza. Again, it seems as though there's an easy fix to alleviate the situation for Gaza, but there does not seem to be the political will for that.
Biden initially expressed unwavering, unconditional support for Israel, almost as though Israel had a license to do whatever it wanted. Now, do you see the US trying to scale back their rhetoric, especially in the name of the humanitarian plight? Also, Biden has just recently said on 60 Minutes that if Israel occupies Gaza, it would be a mistake. Why would it be a mistake for Israel to occupy Gaza?
Well, notwithstanding the fact that, again, these are violations of international law that has been drafted and has been championed by countries like the United States, that would be a credibility issue at a time when American credibility internationally is already arguably at an abyss, at least over the last 50 to 70 years. The other issue, of course, is that this is moving into an election year. And so at the risk of sounding cynical, one has to then go ahead and understand that statements that are coming from the White House, one way or the other, are going to be colored by the fact that President Biden is seeking re-election. The fact that the Progressive Caucus within his own Democratic ranks has come out quite forcefully and strongly demanding that there be more attention to humanitarian aid in Gaza may have shifted his opinion and at least his public statements to be made. And certainly here now we find that Secretary of State Blinken is taking a much more active role for perhaps for the first time, at least visibly, since this conflict or the current conflict began.
All right, Saeed, I wish we had more time. Unfortunately, we will have to leave it there. Saeed Khan, Professor in Near East and Asian Studies at Wayne State University.